Check, check, check. Okay, we're rolling. Hello, everyone. Today on the show, we're talking about what if. What if this is all you get? Are you happy with it? Been thinking a lot about this idea of every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. It's a beautiful sunny day here in St. John. We've been looking for a day like this for a while. I'm way in the red. Wow. Clipping. Hey, how's that? That sound better? That sound better for you? I just want to be nice for your ears. So yeah, it is a beautiful sunny day. I'm in here talking to you by myself in my apartment. The sun's just not shining on this side of the building. It's lighting up other things. But the show must go on, my friends. The show must go on. I was looking for a different voice note. This thing you're hearing in the background is just some guitar noodling demo. And thinking about how effort that I would be putting into making music is going into this podcast or other projects at the moment. Let's explore.
I'm not interested in all of what you have to say. I won't undermine your paragraph. Counting seconds screaming inside, run away. Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? I'm accepting I can do my best, but you're expecting so much more than what you're giving me. It's impressive, there's no pause of breath. I make disturbing, oh God, someone please come set me free. Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? How could you leave me out here stranded? It's burning so cold. Where's all the love and understanding? Panic is taking hold.
All right. What's up, folks? Thanks for being here. Just you, me, and the microphone. I'm sitting here in my living room talking to you on the same microphone that was used to record vocals on that track you just heard. The track which I called Panic, re-released, I guess, under the name Beach Chair on Spotify this last week. I think last week. Spotify and all the streaming platforms. DistroKid. I put it up and I took it down because I didn't like the artwork. They made new artwork, put it back up. And it's like the third or fourth time I've done some kind of a release for that song. So I didn't promote it other than put it on an Instagram story. But it's gotten 54 spins in the last week or so, which is pretty cool considering that, like, my basic point of view on it was everybody who's going to listen to that has heard it. Other than the world, like, I think the song can stand on its own, but how do you get people to care about some music they've never heard of in a genre that is arguably outdated? Look at my demographics. 67% male, 0% female, 33% didn't say. And between the ages of 23 and 37 are my listeners on Spotify, which shouldn't really be surprising. I'm 36. I may not look it. I still get ID'd at the liquor store, which I love. But I am 36 years old. I grew up in the 1990s. So that style of music has a real soft spot for me before the kind of collapse of rock music in the 2000s. And then the wherever we are now, I think we're in a place where we are starting to figure it out again. But that song is kind of deliberately and consciously a bit of a throwback tune. I recorded it in 2 days and kind of pieced it together. After my band had broken up in 2016, I feel like this is like stuff I talk about a lot on here. But anyway, here we are. After my band broke up in 2016, I had moved back to Halifax, Nova Scotia after being a long-distance band member for 3 years. And that's not without its struggles. The biggest one being it's hard to work on new music that way. Unless you turn it into kind of a recording project, you send around demos. People record their different parts. I do think it also is a sign of the times in the way of just that recorded music and live music are different. And that's something that maybe got lost or muddied a little bit in the 90s when I grew up. And then certainly in the 2000s, like by the time that I was out kind of doing anything on my own, it had blown up. Now, somebody who came up with like punk rock, to a lesser degree metal, but I would say like the metal bands, you knew they could play, they had to, and the punk bands were deliberately sloppy, and there's a lot of that going around in the 90s. A big part of the appeal for a lot of this music to me, and like kind of the indie pop, I really liked the Halifax kind of distorted power pop thing. And then I would say in the early 2000s, it was a real, I guess in retrospect, a bubble, but a real heyday for local bands in the Maritimes. And maybe it was just my age and my getting out into the scene for the first time. But there just was a lot of activity and a lot of really great local bands. So the takeaway for me was always like, I could do that. It didn't seem out of reach in the way that even if you watch any kind of documentaries, these punk bands, the old ones, I've been watching Bad Religion stuff recently because I am playing guitar in a Bad Religion cover band, the Bad Religion cover band out of Halifax. We're playing at the Seahorse next week or the week after, whatever Thursday, June 13th is. But so anyway, watching video on YouTube of these guys talking about when they got into it, you know, like you couldn't be Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix. Just how could you ever be that good at the guitar? But seeing punk bands, kids who are their own age, out there playing this music that was like loud and energetic and aggressive and fast, and it you got all of the energy from it, and like, you know, the whatever it is, adrenaline or hormones or whatever it is you're looking for at that age. And I would say, particularly as a young man, speaking from my own experience, you really are looking for some kind of energy from music. There was a long time when I didn't get any music that didn't have loud distorted guitars and like big loud drums. I just didn't understand how anyone could enjoy it. I couldn't really fathom liking music that wasn't, in retrospect, like fast and super compressed. But I also am somebody who's like, I'm distrustful of anything that's too slick. And I would say in probably the last decade, I've had to kind of come around on that as the means of production have gotten into the hands of the workers, to borrow a phrase from Ted Leo, who took it from somewhere smarter than me, I'm sure. Ignorance is not stupidity, folks. They're not the same thing. But now you can make a pretty slick sounding recording at home. Used to be you had to spend a lot of money to do it. But I always have kind of preferred the rough edge thing because I think to me it feels more real and more accessible. Like why the second Rage Against the Machine album, Evil Empire, the drum sound on that is one of my favorite drum sounds of all time because it sounds like a drum kit in a room. It's what I liked about the band Pavement so much is that it's quirky and it's got the energy, but it also is like there's like a noodly looseness to it. It feels like you're right there with them, and that has always appealed to me for whatever reason. So anyway, I got in this band. We were called Glory Glory Man United for a while. We became called Glory Glory. We did it, and it was like a pretty modern indie pop project, and I was the drummer, which I've always been the drummer in bands. Back to my very first bands. I've been playing guitar for almost as long as the drums, but it is much easier to find a guitar player than a drummer. So I became the guy who played the drums in the bands. Then at a certain point, singing is another one that it just wasn't really part of the culture. It seemed to me growing up, it was like bands had singers, sure, but it wasn't something that anybody I knew really aspired to, or seemingly like, it's one of those things people think about, even like musical talent or whatever. You either have it or you don't. But more and more as I find out about artists I like, particularly like people came up with the band thing, people start singing just because somebody had to do it. As you heard from John Mullane last week, people like Chris Hanna of Propagandhi and Tom York of Radiohead. I think Kurt Cobain even said something similar. He started off as a drummer. People who started off as drummers. Ooh, Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, big funny kind of influence on the Panic tune. I didn't mean to give you a complete history of the song, but the lyrics in the chorus, again, as alluded to last week, are a rip of the bridge from Alone and Easy Target off the first Foo Fighters album, also off the first Big Shiny Tunes compilation. And I think I just needed something to put there and kind of built a song around it. But the song itself was a bunch of disconnected ideas that I had recorded on GarageBand on my iPad. And so in 2016, I moved back to Halifax after 3 years in St. John to make the band work and not be long distance. Yeah, because like rehearsing songs that we already knew, fine, to hit the road or whatever. But new material, we didn't really have a process for doing that. So I moved back and the band broke up immediately. So I was there with nothing to do for the first time ever. So I didn't have a job or anything lined up either. And I wound up getting a job with the Halifax Pop Explosion, the 2016 edition of it. I was the festival coordinator, which was kind of a lot of the same sort of work that I had been doing for the band, kind of organizational behind the scenes stuff. I also got to be there was like a live chat feature on the website. So if you live chatted with the Halifax Pop Explosion that year, you were in fact talking to me. And that was kind of funny because people would be a little bit snarky or whatever. They would taunt it a little bit and I would just throw it right back at them. I had fun doing that, which reminds me of the Talking Owl at Rainbow Valley on Prince Edward Island. If you remember that, you know what I'm talking about. But so anyway, it was a lot of desk work leading up to the festival, and then the festival itself, we would work from like 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. And then the week after, everybody just took the week off. Like we basically put in 2 weeks worth of hours in 1 week. And honestly, I don't think I left the house for 2 days. I just slept. And then after that, I had some downtime, so I thought to myself, I'm going to record a song. And so that was done in 2 days on GarageBand using the only real instrument is the guitar, which is my Squier Classic Vibe Telecaster, the 60s one, with the white binding. And so it's emulated amps, MIDI drums and bass. I think I played the drum rhythms on my, I just have a little MIDI keyboard using the Brooklyn drum kit on GarageBand. And because I am a drummer, I know how to program it in a way that sound like, I know how to, even though it's MIDI and I'm drawing it on the screen, I know how to make it the thing that I would actually play. So it is I think there really is some kind of arrested development going on with my own songwriting. In that's the song that although I probably wouldn't have been able to write or certainly record it. I was using 4 tracks at the time. But because I never got to front my own band in high school or going forward, and especially after high school, I went to study music in university, which, at the time felt like a big step or investment in my future. And there's a lot of people I know with arts degrees who graduated high school in the 90s and were kind of funneled off to university. Sort of mixed feelings about it, although while I definitely did learn and gain a lot, that it just wasn't the right path. And speaking of which, as I was thinking about the intro, it's like kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of not. With the Monine line, are we really happy with who we are right now? Monine was a band that I missed entirely because they just didn't come to Antigonish, where my school was, which is like, I get it. My own band played there only a handful of times in the 10 years we were around. Just because like it wasn't really, unless you had an in at the school, it didn't really seem like a viable tour stop or whatever. I don't know. It just like, it wasn't really part of the scene. So it wasn't malicious. People just, it wasn't a priority. So they never came there. They played in Charlottetown a lot, which I'm from Prince Edward Island, and they played in my friends' hometowns a lot and were a legendary live band. But I never got to see them because I chose school, man. I chose school over the band. Sort of, not really. I didn't know. I was just a kid. Give me a break. Let it go. He's just a kid. For anyone who's seen Hobo with a Shotgun. So I recorded and released the song the second day. I spent like all day, 2 days in a row, working on this thing, and it was a little loose. And then I put it up on SoundCloud. I was like vibrating with excitement. I was like shaking. And it was like, whoa, I could just put this out because that's what you can do now. that we have the internet in the digital age. You can just upload it, and then you can go on social media and tell your friends it exists, and voila. And then I mastered it through Lander months later. I put it on SoundCloud. Then I mastered it. My friend Gavin made a lyric video for it, which I released. But again, didn't really have a band name, or like having been through the whole band thing and kind of understanding what goes into a release cycle, which again, John Mullane and I talked about last week. So if you haven't heard that lesson, if you haven't heard that lesson, if you ever hear your weekly lesson, you go back and listen to it. But it's a lot of work and a lot of planning and a big deal. You don't have to do that in order to release music, but if you want it to be commercially successful, you do have to do that. So the point that I found myself in is like, well, I know that this won't get industry attention, but I can just put it out if I want to just do it, and my friends will hear it. That's what I did. It was really exciting. But I put the song out, then I put the video out, and now it's out on Spotify again. So I'm surprised that it got as many listens as it has, to be honest. But that's cool. I'm down with it. It's a piece of work that I am proud of. But anyhow, I've got more solo material just kind of lingering. I've been playing live. I've been had a song like mostly in the can that I've been working on with Adam Warren, my old bandmate. And I don't think we've worked on it in close to a year. It's like almost done, but again, without a release plan, there's almost no point in putting out music that you've really worked on. Like something I did on my computer in 2 days, whatever, who cares? And I actually did put a bunch of, there's 3 other songs up on my Bandcamp that are more just kind of demos, and they're actually like auto drummer. I didn't even program the drums. So for me, for Bandcamp, that's fine. But if you're going to put time and energy into something, you got to do it right when you put it out. Although even thinking of that, like, I think there is a certain saturation point for local bands. My friends in Buttes just put out a new single, The City Loves Me, which is great. First heard it, probably a year and a half ago. It's great. And they had a little, like follow us on Spotify and you can see our video early, which is slick. Because I've seen some other things which are like, pre-save the single and you can hear it when it comes out on Friday or whatever. And I've done that too. But I do think with any kind of digital marketing trick like that, there's only a few people who can do it before you just stop caring. As a consumer, maybe I'm jaded, but I just feel like for the average person now, there is the like super music enthusiast who is going to get really excited about that and support all their favorite brands. Wow. All their favorite artists or brands. And, but that person is the exception, and that's the person you're likely to find, volunteering at the music festival or working in the industry or whatever. But that is not the general public. And I have long felt, especially in the last few years, for a while when I was younger, it really was exciting to discover this whole other world of music that was kind of outside of what you saw on TV and heard on the radio. The mainstream, so to speak, and to be a part of that scene in that community was really exciting to me. But at a certain point, you start your own band and you're out trying to push it, you discover that you can't make it, or make a living or whatever it is you're trying to do. You can't do that just playing to friends and family. At a certain point, you need people who you've never met to become interested in what you're doing. and want to come to your show or, buy your CD, which we made a lot of and sold them for... Our first one we sold for too much. Our second one we sold for $5 and it had 5 songs on it. Totally fair. But we made 1,000 copies of it. You want 50? I'll give you a box. Or, stream your music or whatever. Also, as an aside, 54 plays, which, while I can feel good about that, I know that it's nothing in the world of streaming music. I was at a thing where I heard Troy Carter, the global head of creator services for Spotify, and Lady Gaga's former manager talking about how 1 million streams really was not a lot on the Spotify platform. So if 1 million is not a lot, most of us are out of luck. I think if you're hoping to, dominate or even make a living that way, it's worth $4,000-ish, which, I wouldn't turn down. If you wanted to give me $4,000 right now, I would accept it. But it's a lot of streams to get that kind of cash. So whatever. That it is what it is. We are back to the age which, although anybody can play, you can get in there and participate and you can blow yourself up. You still are kind of shooting for that top tier if you want to really get paid for what you're doing, or you're figuring out other ways to make money. But that's not what I'm here to talk about, is it? I was going to title this My Best Piece of Drum Advice. So I want to deliver you some value. So a little bit of an update on what I'm doing here with this episode. I'm almost done of the season. I was also going to call this Millennial Burnout. I've got an interview recorded, just waiting to be chopped up, and another one lined up. And then I do still have that half hour of drum stuff with Clinton. And then that's going to be it for season 2. I've talked about this before, how, people like, particularly Tim Ferriss, I guess, because he put out an episode called, of his podcast called, How to Launch a Successful Podcast or something. So, of course, I listened to it. My theme song just came back on. How long have I been talking? Hang on just a second. Whoa, where'd it go? Yeah, Tim Ferriss, if you're thinking about launching a podcast, it is definitely worth doing. Checking out this episode of his, because he takes you through it, kind of at his how he goes about interviewing people, and one of his things that he says is he likes to have 4 episodes recorded, so he's always ahead of himself, and that way, if stuff comes up, then sorry, that song just threw off my train of thought. If stuff comes up, he's still got some wiggle room, some leeway before he runs out of material. And that way he's able to keep the show going indefinitely. Great, but he also says that Mondays and Fridays are podcast days for him, so he's recording, or I seriously doubt that he edits his own podcast. One thing that I thought about recently is that, this is also the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek, whose whole thing was outsource as much of your life as possible, outsource and automate. So there was a point at the end of my first season where I was making notes of every topic that we covered, during an episode. And that's easy enough to do when you're chopping it up on GarageBand. If you just like kind of slice it every time there's a pause or like a or like a half formulated thought, and then you label that section, then all you have to do when the show is done and those clips are rearranged if they need to be, is grab the titles of each of those sections, and boom, there's your list of basically minutes for your episode. But it all just takes time. And again, it is that thing, you're choosing to do one thing, you're saying no to something else. So every kind of piece of promotion, every hour that I spend kind of curating the back end of a podcast episode is an hour that I'm not doing something else. Now, I did notice statistically, looking at the stats on my website for the Joe Crabtree episode in particular, that I got a lot of traffic for that one, and that was an episode that I did do the detailed notes for. But the Brad Davis episode before it, I didn't get a ton of traffic on. I did kind of Facebook ad campaigns for both. And what I've noticed in my own show is that the most successful episodes just seem to be ones that feature people that people want to listen to. Maybe these people are well connected themselves. But in my top, I can't remember my top 5. My top 4, though, definitely are Mike Bellier, Jay Vautour, Glenn Barrington, Joe Crabtree. Crabtree is ahead of Barrington, I believe. What's interesting about that is that only one of those 4 episodes did I bother doing the big show note thing for. Bellier and Javo and Glenn, I did kind of pull some videos of stuff they've done and put it on my website. So I don't know how much that, how much people care about that stuff, how much they use it. I definitely got a lot of visitors to the website as a result of the Joe Crabtree episode, but I don't know if that's because the website is where the Facebook ad was pointing people. I don't know whether it was name recognition or what. I suspect, though, similar to the other popular ones, it was more like people in my circle know Tim, his brother, a.k.a. Paper Beat Scissors, and were interested. And, the show had gathered enough steam at that point. But in the end, I don't really know. I don't know if the show notes are valuable. I don't know a whole lot about my listeners' habits, except that it's my base right now is more like my friends that I realize, and I'm actually totally cool with that. I would rather be speaking to my community than trying to make some kind of show for the masses. Because, how are you ever going to find it? There's so many podcasts out there. Even my favorite ones, I don't listen to every episode. So, I've got a few more pre-recorded things, and then that's going to be it for this season. Season 1, I just decided it was over when I ran out of material, and I didn't know how I was going to keep it going. Season 2 is kind of similar. I recorded the Grinelli episode. I guess I had capped season 1. I launched it in May, so it would have been done by June of last year. And then I recorded the Grinelli episode at the end of July or early August, something like that. Moved to New Brunswick in the fall, kind of was getting set up doing new things. I wasn't really in a place to be doing more podcasts, but this thing was just sitting in the back burner, lingering on my hard drive. I knew I had to release it. So, and I knew it would be a great way to kick off season 2. End of January was when I finally did it. But what was funny about that was that the second episode was one that I did with my younger brothers, and it actually got more listeners. I did a promo campaign for the Cornelli episode, and people who were interested tuned in. But the name recognition, like the celebrity factor, didn't really help all that much. I don't think, as far as I can tell. We're local celebrities now. I was listening to Seth Godin's Akimbo podcast the other day. I put a thing on Instagram about it. But he did this episode about, it was called like Fooled by Spectrum. And basically the idea that, TV created this bubble where there was a monoculture in North America, and that was in the middle of the 20th century. And we all kind of grew up with it until the internet came along. And before that happened, things really were local. You were a local celebrity, you were a local newspaper, you were, a local musician or whatever, with very few exceptions. I guess like movies maybe are in recorded music before that. And then with the advent of mass media, all of a sudden you had these people that were national or global, whether it's, people or brands or whatever you like. But the internet has kind of blown that apart. There's no medium that reaches everyone anymore. So trying to create something that's going to appeal to everybody, it doesn't work because you wind up like cutting off the parts that make it interesting. It's not really for anybody, so nobody really has time for it, or just finds it, or whatever. I don't know. If you make it generic and nobody cares. So I would prefer for this to be a show for and about the community that I am a part of. To that end, the last few episodes are going to be me talking to some coworkers of mine at the Interaction School of Performing Arts here in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, which is really a kind of cool and crazy organization in the sense of I didn't know about it before I moved here, but it's in this big, weird old church, which part of the building is from the 1880s and part of it is from the 1960s. And there's jam rooms there. There's like a baby grand piano that I can play. So it's like, it's really neat to have access to it. And also just the fact that this building exists and that's what's inside of it. There's not someone trying to turn it into condos or something. So anyhow, this is way too deep in the episode to actually be valuable, perhaps. So maybe I'll chop this up and put it somewhere else. But in an effort to provide value to the listener, one thing I wanted to talk about today, and this has been on my mind as I'm, getting ready for a bunch of gigs this month, is my best piece of drum advice. So for me, someone who's been playing drums for about 25 years, I don't know that this is honestly applicable before you've been doing it a long time, but the best piece of advice I can give anyone is listen to the entire band, the entire group, the entire piece of music, the context that you're playing in. Listen to what it needs and what it doesn't need. And that may sound really abstract, so here's what I mean. If you are filling in with a band, if you're a drummer and you're sitting in with another band, how do you approach your job? To me, what I've found, the thing that works the best is to listen to the recordings, whatever they can give you for context, and listen to how the other drummer plays. And you're going to have to sit down and play through it yourself. The drums being the physical instrument that they are, everybody plays a little bit differently. Everybody has got different habits, different physical habits. And you'll find if you've got some licks that work well, you're going to end up playing those things over and over again, especially on recordings. It's not just because you're not creative, you don't have any ideas, but if something sounds good, you can execute it without speeding up or slowing down or like choking and derailing the song. That's what you're going to play, especially on a recording where you have to play the whole song through. Don't speed up or slow down. Make it feel as good as possible. You can't afford to ruin a take because of some fill that you were trying out. You just can't afford that. But the rub of this, when you're filling in with bands, is that every drummer plays differently. Everybody's got a different set of habits. This is a reason why it's good to learn things note for note, because it's going to stretch you out of your set of habits. You're going to be learning somebody else's habits, which are by definition different from yours. So you're going to wind up having to play things that maybe don't feel natural, things that you definitely wouldn't have thought of. And it can be really good in some cases because, especially if you're not a professional drummer or you're not like John Bonham or whatever, or Ringo Starr, actually. Ringo is some crazy stuff to learn to really try to make it feel right because he was left-handed. And so a lot of his fills, like, try learning She Said off of Revolver, note for note. See if you can do it. I bet you can't. I bet you give up first. I bet you do. But it's going to force you to play things in a way both that sounds good and that you're not used to. So when you're filling in with bands, you're going to find that if the band has a regular drummer, a lot of that person's parts are going to be the kind of thing that they tend to play. When I filled in with Buttes, I found it to be a real challenge, honestly, because Joel plays a lot of fast 16th notes, and I would do that sometimes, but I had trouble keeping it up for entire songs or entire sections of songs. And he really has his own way of going about things, which is just not the way that I would do it. So while I can play the songs the way that I would play them, and it'll sound fine, it really is going to throw the other members of the band off their game because it's going to sound and probably feel different from what they're expecting. Note for note, if you can do it, is great in those situations because people who aren't drummers can't always articulate what they're looking for in a drum part. They'll be like, no, normally it's like kind of like softer in this part, or just play it like kind of chill here, and then like really go crazy in the chorus or something. And maybe that means, maybe the go crazy means play it on the crash cymbal. It's still like a straight beat, but it's a lot louder because it's on the crash cymbal. People don't necessarily know to tell you that, but they can feel it for sure. They know when it's not right. They may not be able to tell you what is not right about it, though. So the best thing that you can do, in my experience, is try to figure out what the essential components of the part are, the essential components of the song. What are people going to notice if it's not there? And then from there, you can kind of deduce what are people not going to notice. But this is really valuable when learning cover tunes too, because what a lot of young drummers will do is like you get a bunch of licks together and kind of fast stuff that you can play, and then you hear a song that's just got a really straight, simple beat, and you hear it, you think, yeah, I can do that, but I can also do stuff that's way better than that. So I'm going to do that instead because the thing that I can play is more impressive, therefore better. And the problem with that is, sure, that's what you think, but in reality, the thing that you're playing clashes with the other instruments. It doesn't provide that kind of foundation or propulsion that the original drum beat was there to do in the first place, and nobody can dance to what you're doing. So that's the other one. And again, this is where like being aware of the entire context can really shift how you think about it. This is something that this only really opened up to me in the last 5 years, but it has to do with getting out of your head and your little drum zone and listening to the entire sound. You know, good monitors obviously help a lot with this, but I have found, you know, even during rehearsal, times when I have not felt good about what I was playing, like my part was boring or just what I was doing wasn't very good or interesting or it wasn't locking in or grooving or whatever, the music didn't feel good. Those have been times when I was only listening to myself. If you want to get rid of that worry, instantly feel better, the music will feel better. Zoom out from you, listen to the other instruments. If you are thinking about how to play what you are playing, that means the thing that you're trying to play is too hard for you right now. You don't know it well enough to just play it. People have a hard time with that, and that's ego. It's hard to admit that this thing that you're trying to that like you're not good enough, that you can't pull it off, you can't hack it right now. I'm not saying you'll never be good enough, but right now, if you got to think about it, you don't know it very well, and it's probably too complicated. And if you are paying attention only to yourself and not to the rest of the band, like, what do you think that's going to sound like? Think about that. You're trying to play something that takes all of your concentration to keep it together to the point where you're not even aware of what the other people around you are doing. Like, how is that going to sound good to anyone who is not you? I'm still here. I'm just pausing to let that sink in. And thinking about it myself. But on the flip side, if you can be so confident and so rock solid in what you're playing that you don't have to think about it at all, if all you're thinking about is the other instruments or the tracks or the live situation, then you'll find that your job becomes so much more fun and your ego actually can stay out of it, because then you notice every little like volume increase on the ride cymbal, every, the rhythmic push and pull. Are you ahead of the beat? Are you behind the beat? Are you locking up with the other members of the band? How is the spot that you put this note? Where does it sit in relation to what the bass is doing? How is the audience responding to and then it becomes about controlling the flow of energy. A way that I used to think about it a lot was that a drummer was like a traffic conductor, in that you're setting up different sections of the songs, different instruments, different riffs, melodies, or whatever. You are the one kind of the signals that make these things move. And in a live situation with the drums, you really are driving the energy. and the groove. And the fills and the busy stuff really are just incidental. And if you need to get it out, maybe you should actually find a situation where you can play drum solos. You know, the Instagram drummers drive me crazy. I was looking at one today where this dude is playing like rolls on the hi-hat. He's just playing a beat. It's like a normal beat, but he's like got all these doubles on his hi-hat, playing rolls on the hi-hat, and then he's got these like stacked cymbals over on the right so that he can go back and forth between the two of them. And then he's doing the like kind of quads on the toms with the double, so like do 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 do. So right, left, and then two on the bass drum. You know, I do that stuff too. It's fun. It's not very musical. And so people who make these drum videos, like, it's not music. Anybody watching it knows that too. That's not really what it's about. But everybody who gets into drumming does it because they want to go crazy on the drum kit. I really believe. Who honestly starts playing the drums because they just want to provide a steady beat in the background? Like, really? Nobody. So I get it. I mean, I made my 31 days of drum tips Instagram thing, and that was kind of an improvised project anyway. I didn't really have a plan. I just did those off the cuff every day. And the resulting kind of up and down pattern of both the complexity of the output and my own attitude towards it, I kind of crashed in the middle, are a result of that, a reflection of that. But I actually am into that because I think it, it brings some humanity to the whole thing. You're not just learning drum tips, you're going on the journey. But I showed this to an 8-year-old, I don't know how old this kid is, he's probably 8, piano student the other day. I was like, yeah, look at me, that's playing drums on the internet. And I was just playing a beat or something. And he goes, that's not very impressive. Like, no, it's not. It's not supposed to be. That's not the point. But that is the way that people judge it. It's the way that we look at it, because I know that I used to do it myself. Where if it's not impressive, it must be because the person doesn't know how to do something impressive. And what is the point if you're not trying to be impressive? Maybe that's where I'm going to sign off. That's pretty deep, isn't it? What's the point if you're not trying to be impressive? So if you made it this far, I salute you. I thought I might cut off the show for the summer, but what I think I'm going to do instead is do just kind of a more raw version of the thing. I like having a platform. I like being able to just kind of run my mouth, comment on things in the world. I watched Enter the Dragon last night, retro movie at the Imperial Theater here in town. Last Monday of every month or some Monday of every month? I guess it's the last Monday of every month. They do a retro film. So this was the Bruce Lee movie, Enter the Dragon, which I had never seen. I really enjoyed it. It's cool to see it in a movie theater. Watched Purple Rain the night before that. And, honestly, these are things that I did instead of editing the podcast interview that I recorded last week, which is a good one. It's going to be a good one. But you got to live your life. It does come at the expense of having one of these things recorded or rather edited. But in the grand scheme, I don't know that keeping that strict production schedule would be better. Maybe it would be. I don't know. What else? I didn't make it out to see Out of Controller on Saturday. I was kind of bummed about that. I was hanging out with some people, and then was hanging out with some other people, and then it was like 1:10 a.m. And I was like, all right, I gotta go, or I'm gonna miss them. And then I left my friend Jeff's house, and then by the time I passed my own front door, which was on the way to the bar, it was 1:20, and I was like, you know what? I need to get there The show's going to be over. They're going to be packing up, and I'm just going to be at Pepper's Pub at 1:30 a.m. No one needs that. So I just went home. Big gigs coming up, though. I'm playing Bad Religion tunes. I'm playing drums in Around the World in 80 Days at the Imperial Theater. So if you don't know, Imperial's like an 800-seater, like 100-year-old theater, and I'm going to be in the pit band for the show the school is doing, Around the World in 80 Days. We're playing King of New York from Newsies. I hope that's not a spoiler, but I can't imagine who is listening to this show at this point that is really going to go, oh, about that. But that's funny. So that's what, next week? Then the week after, it's Bad Religion tunes with Seahorse, which is really fun. It's been fun digging into some of the early catalog, which I wasn't so familiar with. I kind of got into Bad Religion in the mid-'90s and really through the Epitaph Punkorama compilations at that time. And it was in the early Napster days, but the current albums that they were putting out were the major label 90s ones. I think they were on Atlantic. Stranger Than Fiction, Gray Race, No Substance, and The New America. And so we're doing some stuff from Against the Grain, so I also I knew, a smattering of singles, which I got from Napster or whatever. But at that time, it would have been, I could have bought Against